everyone. Hello. This is Bridie Rose Smith live from the Forbidden Library again. Yes. Welcome, Jake, Boris, Red Candy Guy, Void, Luke. I think I covered everyone. Hello. And welcome. We're going to be reading more Frankenstein today. Hello, Luke. Hello. And I was trying to remember a little summary of what we read last time. Apparently it was only 10% of this book, so honestly that was kind of a bad amount compared to my usual. Sometimes we get through a quarter of a book in a whole stream, but this is only 10%. That could be because Frankenstein is a little bit bigger than some of the books that we have tackled on these streams so far, but I am unsure. However, we did only get to chapter 2, and we did have some of those pages to go for first. Hello, Zero is pretty short too. Welcome. How are you guys doing? Are you fine? Is you having a wonderful evening, morning, afternoon, whatever it might be for you in whatever part of the world you live in? Hello, Normlet. Hello. You're good. That is wonderful, yes. Ready to hear some classic reading? Classic writing. Not so classic reading from me. Wonderful reading, though. The most perfectest reading you will ever find outside of Audible or something like that, yes. It's the afternoon, and my cat is watching me from the top of the laundry basket. Oh, how wonderful! Hello, Boris's cat! A little bit deep with the voice. It was just Jessie to James. Good evening. Oh, yes, with Jessie! James! Meow, that's right. Is it, what were they called? Princess and Madame. Who is watching you right now, Boris? Those are the names of your cats, were they not? Another wonderful reason to join my Discord, everybody, is the cat tax from Boris. Yes, it is rather wonderful. They are very pretty kitties. But, for now, you love my stream so much. Well, thank you, Luke, thank you. I do appreciate it. I am obviously the best, and you should love my streams, yes. But shall we get on with the book? Yes, I believe so. We do need to do some reading. Which Bridie is all of Team Rocket, yes. Under this hat you'll find Catties from Meowth, and the rest of the voices are very easy to do. But I can't quite do the Meowth, that's right. But no, I can't go quite American enough for it, yes. But for now, yes, reading, yes. It's what you're here for, it's what I am here for. Let us do some reading. Chapter 2. We were brought up together. Oh yes, I did want to do a small recap first, because I was struggling to remember too. So we started off with some letters from a man who was going to go search, I believe it was a pole. I don't know whether it was to go see Santa or whether it was the South Pole. But he was going to one of those places. He didn't have a friend, but he found one sleighing with a doggo, following someone else who was sleighing with doggos across the ice plains, and helped him onto his boat. Oh, that is a very big kofi message. That is... What? Wait, how much did you just... 1 minute, 1 hot second. Computer, why are you not... Is my mouse run out of battery? Why is it not clicking on things? That's working. Is it Chrome? Is it Chrome that is confused? I cannot see... Chat has not updated for me since Q. And, oh no. We're having some technical issues again. Oh no, oh no, oh no, oh no, no. Okay, I've managed to update that. Yes. Yes. Let me read that a hot minute. New donation from Void. How I imagined Bridie's personality. Which Bridie? Remember, when your biggest fan droid betrayed you and joined my side, it was me, Bridie, and I was the one who went back. Yes. It has updated now. I could see it, but I could not read it before. I am back. It is back. For some reason, my Chrome just decided to go nope. Nopedy nope, nope, nope. How much did you just give me? Void, you just gave me £100! What in the world? Thank you so much, Void. See, I am much better. No, I'm not. I am brainy, obviously. But obviously I'm 100% better, yes. Thank you so much, Void. Oh, lord-diddy-do. Void is dropping the nukes, yes. What am I even gonna... Well, actually, I do know where that money can go. Yes, I do. Yes. I don't know why the sound doesn't come through for you guys, but it does do text-to-speech for me when the kofi pops up. And I heard it say 100... at the end, but I did not quite believe it, so I had to go onto my Ko-fi page and be like, was that real? And it was. Thank you so much, Void. I think it cut off your message, though, so let me go onto Patreon and actually read it for you. Yes, I was the one who went back in time. He gave Void a burrito so he'd love me more. Yes, that is what I did. Of course, of course. I hope you enjoyed that burrito because I am enjoying your loyalty. Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much, Void. 10 out of 10. Execution is wonderful. You have officially distracted me. I was trying to read. Also, Luke, thank you for all the compliments. I love them. They are the best, and I deserve them all. Because I am the best. Yes. Wonderful. Yes, you didn't hear it, and that's a bit sad that it does not work for you. Hello, Sarah Poo Poo. Welcome. Welcome, welcome. Let me continue to read a little bit. I can't believe you gave me so much money. Anyway. Yes, I was trying to do a summary, was I not? Yes, there was a man who found a man, and now that man is telling his life story so that this other man, doesn't make the same mistakes. We don't know whether this man he picked up was Frankenstein, or the professor, the true monster, if you will. So I suppose we'll find that out as we go, though I feel like it may be the true monster, and he was running after his monster. You know the stuff. You are the cheeky witch. Yes, you are, Zeruboo. I hope you haven't gotten in any more trouble with your mother. We were brought up together. Yes, and then his story began that he was given a very cute sister, and he was told that that sister belonged to him, and he took that literally. Yes. We were brought up together. There was not quite a year difference in our ages. I need not say that we were strangers to any species of disunion or dispute. Harmony was the soul of our companionship, and the diversity and contrast that subsided in our characters drew us nearer together. Oh no! Not your brother. Siblings, my. Elizabeth was a lot calmer and more concentrated disposition. No, my problem with tripping up on this is what I would like to say is Elizabeth was a calmer and more concentrated of disposition. But even that would be incorrect. I'm trying to unconsciously put in bad grammar. But with all my ardour, I was capable of a more intense application, and was more deeply smitten with the thirst for knowledge. She busied herself with following the aerial creations of the poets, and in the majestic and wondrous scenes which surrounded our Swiss home, the sublime shape of the mountains, the changes of seasons, tempest and calm, and silence of winter, and the life and turbulence of our alpine summers. She found ample scope for admiration and delight, while my companion contemplated with a serious and satisfied spirit the magnificent appearances of things. I delighted in investigation of their cause. Just locked the door with magic, because your room doesn't have a lock. Oh, that is fair. Your room should have a lock. The world was, to me, a secret which I desired to divine. Curiosity, earnest research, to learn the hidden laws of nature, gladness akin to rapture, as they were unfolded to me, are among the earliest sensations I can remember. On the birth of her second son, my junior by 7 years, my parents gave up entirely their wandering life, and fixed themselves in their native country. We possessed a house in Geneva, and Champagne on Belrive, the eastern shore of the lake, at the distance of rather more than a league from the city. We resided principally in the latter, and lives of my parents were passed in considerable seclusion. It was my temper to avoid the crowd, and to attach myself fervently to a few. I believe that is posh, for he was introverted. It was my temper, yes. I was indifferent, therefore, to my schoolfellows in general, but I united myself in the bonds of the closest friendship to one among them. Henry Clerval was the sort of merchant of the Geneva. Oh yes, that thing that most people in this chat probably have no idea about, and definitely are not. Introverts! Oh, sweet people who just hold up in their little lives. This is very cute. Yes, is that not an introverted person? I mean, you can enjoy socializing as an introverted person, but you just do not get the whole, people all the time thing. Yes. Your pet spider eclipse, yes. He was a boy of singular talent and fancy. He loved enterprise, hardship, and even danger for its own sake. He was deeply read in books of chivalry and romance. He composed heroic songs, and began to write many a tale of enchantment and knightly adventure. He tried to make us act plays, and to enter into masquerades, in which the characters were drawn from the heroes of Rocinvellas of the Round Table of King Arthur, and the chivalrous train who shed their blood to redeem the holy scripture from the hands of the infidels. No human being could have passed a happier childhood than myself. My parents were possessed by the very spirit of kindness and indulgence. We felt that they were not tyrants to rule our lot according to their caprice, but the agents and creators of all the many delights we enjoyed. When I mingled with other families, I distinctly discerned how peculiarly fortunate my lot was, and gratitude assisted the development of filial love. Good luck with that, Sirapoo-poo. Yes, I am like you a little bit, Luke. I do find it hard to be the social on the social media. I'm very glad that a lot of other people are a bit more social on the Discord, because I find it somewhat difficult to be social all the time on there. But I do try my best. I do. Hi, Twins, welcome. And also Bear Tommy, I did see you there. Hello and welcome. My temper was sometimes violent, and my passions vehement, but by some law my temperature they were turned not towards childish pursuits, but to an eager desire to learn, and not to learn all things indiscriminately. I confess that neither the structure of languages, nor the code of governments, nor the politics of various states possess attractions for me. It was the secrets of heaven and earth that I desired to learn, and whether it was the outward substance of things, or the inner spirit of nature, and the mysterious soul of man that occupied me, still my inquiries were directed to the metaphysical, or in its highest sense, the physical secrets of the world. Yes, I mean, yes, because it's always been me, obviously. Obviously, it's always me, and I'm not leaving the Discord to the peasant or anything. But it's fine, it's always me, yes. Don't talk about your mother like that, Sirapoo-poo. Make sure you apologize to her. She's trying hard to raise you. Respect your elders, sweetie. I am generally outgoing and sociable, but also spend long periods on my own. Yes! I like to see my friends every so often, yes, but I do like a lot of time on my own. Yes, no, who's the peasant? No one's the peasant. I'm Brainy Rose Smith, so there's obviously no one else. Yes, I would love to see the spider. Yes, I would pop in there just for a minute to see the spider, but I would mostly leave it to the peasant. But it's fine, yes. Meanwhile, Clerval occupied himself, so to speak, with the moral relations of things, the busy stage of life. The virtues of heroes and the actions of men were his theme, and his hope and his dream was to become among those whose names were recorded in a story as the gallant and adventurous benefactors of our species. The saintly soul of Elizabeth shone like a dedicated lamp in our peaceful home. Her sympathy was ours, her smile, her soft voice, the sweet glance of her celestial eyes, wherever to bless and animate us. She was the living spirit of love to soften and attract. I might have become sullen in my study, rough through the ardor of my nature, but that she was there to subdue me to a semblance of her own gentleness. And Clerval? Could aught ill entrench on the noble spirit of Clerval? Yet he might not have been so perfectly humane, so thoughtful in his generosity, so full of kindness and tenderness amidst his passion for adventurous exploit, had she not unfolded to him the real loveliness of beneficence, yes, and made the doing good the end and aim of his soaring ambition. I can see why she likes this tea stuff. Wait, no, obviously I've always loved tea, yes. Yes. I feel exquisite pleasure in the dwelling on the recollections of childhood. Before misfortune, I had tainted my mind and changed its bright visions of extensive usefulness into gloomy and narrow reflections upon the self. Sounds like you peaked in high school. Besides, in drawing the picture of my early days, I also recorded those events which led to my insensible steps, to my after a tale of misery. For when I would account to myself for the birth of that passion, which afterward ruled my destiny, I find it arise like a mountain river from the ignoble and most forgotten sources. But, swelling as it proceeded, it became the torrent which, in course, had swept away all my hopes and joys. Hello, Jobber Hop. Are you doing a bit better? How is your doggo? I'm not going to whisper my thoughts louder. My thoughts are my own. I probably should not whisper them if that is the case. But I'm totally not getting used to this body and this throat. But it's fine. Yes. It's fine. It's fine. Yes. Yes. All fine. Yes. He's moving like an old man, but slowly getting better, thanks. Oh, wonderful. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Good. Cats must be fed, yes. Boo, 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 boo. Oh, I love black cats too. I do have a black cat, but I have put it on the Discord more than once, yes. No, not whispering things at all. No. I would not hint anything. Why would I hint anything? There's nothing for you to figure out. I am the perfect Briny Rose Smith, and there is nothing to be figured out. Yes. I don't know what you're talking about, Void. Just, no. Anyway. Natural philosophy is the genius that has regulated my fate. I desire, therefore, in this narration to share those facts which led to my predilection for that science. When I was 13 years of age, we all went to a party of pleasure to the baths near Thornton. Yes! There was no other Bryony. I have always been me. This is the Bryony that has always been. When I was 13 years, 13 years of age, and they went to a party of pleasure near the baths. Well, I worry that he's going to a party of pleasure of 13, but I am going to assume that is not what I am thinking of. Maybe it is just a pool party, yes. The inclemency of the weather obliged us to remain a day confined in the inn. In this house I chanced to find a volume of the works of Cornelius Agrippa. I opened it with apathy, the theory which he attempts to demonstrate, and the wonderful facts which he regulates soon changed this feeling into enthusiasm. A new joy seemed to draw upon my mind, and bounding with joy, I communicated my discovery to my father. My father looked carelessly at the title of the book, and said, "Ah, Cornelius Agrippa. My dear Victor, do not waste your time upon this. It is sad trash." If instead of this remark, my father had taken pains to explain to me that the principles of Agrippa had been entirely explored, and that modern systems of science had been introduced which possessed much greater powers than the ancient, because of the powers the latter were chimerical, while those of the former were real and practical under circumstances. I should have certainly thrown Agrippa aside, and have contended my imagination, warmed as it was, by returning with greater ardour to my former studies. It is possible that the train of my ideas would never have received the fatal impulse that led to my ruin. But the cursory glance my father had taken at my volume by no means assured me that he was acquainted with its contents, and I continued to read with the greatest avidity. When I returned home, my first care was to procure the whole works of this author, and afterwards of Paracelsus and Albertus Magnus. I read and studied the wild fantasies of these writers with delight. They appeared to me treasures known to few besides myself. I have described myself as always having been imbued with a fervent longing to penetrate the secrets of nature. In spite of the intense labour and wonderful discoveries of modern philosophers, I always came from my studies discontented and unsatisfied. Sir Isaac Newton is said to have avowed that he felt like a child picking up shells beside the great and unexplored ocean of truth. Those of his successors in each branch of natural philosophy with whom I was acquainted appeared even to my boy's apprehensions as tyros engaged in the same pursuit. Oh, that's okay, Hope. Thank you very much for coming and leaving a like. I highly appreciate it. I hope you have a wonderful day. The untaught peasant beheld the elements around him and was acquainted with their practical uses. The most learned philosopher knew a little more. He had partially unveiled the face of nature, but her immortal lineaments looks about right, yes, were still a wonder and a mystery. He might dissect, anatomize, and give names, but not speak of a final cause. Causes in their secondary and tertiary grades were utterly unknown to him. I had gazed upon the fortifications and impediments that seemed to keep human beings from entering the citadel of nature, and rashly and ignorantly had a repined. But here were books, and here were men who had penetrated deeper and knew more. I took their word for all that they averred, and I became their disciple. It may appear strange and that such should arise in the 18th century, but while I followed their routine of education in the schools of Geneva, I was, to a great degree, self-taught with regard to my favourite studies. My father was non-scientific, and I was left to struggle with a child's blindness, added to a student's thirst for knowledge. Under the guidance of my new preceptors, I entered with the greatest diligence in the search of the philosopher's stone, the elixir of life, but the latter soon obtained by undivided attention. Wealth was an inferior object But what glory would attend the discovery if I could banish disease from the human frame and render man invulnerable to any but a violent death? Nor were these my only visions. The raising of ghosts or devils was a promise liberally accorded by several of my favourite authors, the fulfilment of which I most eagerly sought. And if my incantations were always unsuccessful, I attributed their failure to my own inexperience, and than to a want of skill or fidelity of my instructions. No, that's the problem. He is not a state alchemist. He is a rogue. And thus, for a time, I was occupied by exploded systems mingling like an unadept, 1,000 contradictory theories, and floundering desperately in a very slew of multifarious knowledge, guided by an ardent imagination and childish reasoning, till an accident again changed the current of my ideas. You're going to lurk, Luke? Well, that is fine. You have a nice, relaxing, lurky time. And thank you for coming. I appreciate you. Yes, I will have a very fun stream. It is already very fun. The language in this is a little bit difficult at times, but it flows so well. It is so very easy to read once I get into the rhythm of it. Yes. When I was about 15 years old, we had retired to our house near Bellerive, when we witnessed a most violent and terrible thunderstorm. It advanced from behind the mountains of Jura, and the thunder burst at once with frightful loudness. From various quarters of the heavens I remained, while the storm lasted, watching its progress with curiosity and delight. As I stood at the door, on a sudden I beheld a stream of fire issue from an old and beautiful oak, which stood about 20 yards from our house. So as soon as the dazzling light vanished, the oak had disappeared, and nothing remained but a blasted stump. When we visited it the next morning, we found the tree shattered in a singular manner. It was not splintered by the shock, but entirely reduced to thin ribbons of wood. I never beheld anything so utterly destroyed. Before this, I was not unacquainted with the more obvious laws of electricity. On this occasion, a man of great research in natural philosophy was with us, and, excited by this catastrophe, he entered on the explanation of a theory which he had formed on the subject of electricity and galvanism, which was at once new and astonishing to me. All that he said threw greatly into the shade of Cornelius Agrippa, Albus Magnus, and Paracelsus, the lords of my imagination. But by some fatality, the overthrow of these men disinclined me to pursue my accustomed ideas. It seemed to me as if nothing would or could ever be known. All that had so long engaged my attention suddenly grew despicable. By one of those caprices of the mind which we are perhaps most subject to in early youth, I at once gave up my former occupations, set down natural history and all its progeny as a deformed and abortive creation, and entertained the greatest disdain for a would-be science, which would never even step within the threshold of real knowledge. In this mood of mind, I betook myself to the mathematics and branches of study appertaining to that science as being built up upon secure foundations, so worthy of my consideration. Thus strangely are souls constructed. By such slight ligaments are we bound to prosperity or ruin. When I looked back, it seemed to me as if this was almost drink. Okay, back to it, yes. Thus strangely are souls constructed, and by such slight ligaments are we bound to prosperity or ruin. When I look back, it seems to me as if this almost miraculous change of inclination and will was the immediate suggestion of the guardian angel of my life, the last effort made by the spirit of preservation to avert the storm that was even then hanging in the stars, and ready to envelop me. No worries, Sirapoo. I do hope someone manages to feed your cat, then. I don't want her going hungry. Her victory was announced by an unusual tranquillity and gladness of soul, which followed the relinquishing of my ancient and latterly tormented studies. It was thus that I was to be taught to associate evil with their prosecution, happiness with their disregard. It was a strong effort of the spirit of good, but it was ineffectual. Destiny was too potent, and her immutable laws had decreed my utter and terrible destruction. Oh no. Chapter 3. Oh, she didn't want food, she wanted cuddles. Oh, how cat of it. Oh, how cat of her. Chapter 3. When I had attained the age of 17, my parents resolved that I should become a student at the University of Ingolstadt. Ingolstadt? That is a very terrible name. Ingolstadt. Ingolstadt. It almost sounds like England, but I don't know. Definitely not. Hopefully that word does not come up a lot. I had hitherto attended the schools of Geneva, but my father thought it necessary for the completion of my education that I should be made acquainted with other customs than those of my native country. My departure was therefore fixed at an early date, but before the day resolved upon could arrive, the first misfortune of my life occurred. An omen. It was, as it were, of my future misery. Elizabeth had caught the scarlet fever. Her illness was severe. She was in the greatest danger. During her illness, many arguments had been urged to pursue my mother to refrain from attending upon her. She had at first yielded to our entreaties, but when she heard that the life of her favourite was menaced, she could no longer control her anxiety. She attended her sick-bed. Her watchful attentions triumphed over the malignity of the distemper. Elizabeth was saved, but the consequences of this imprudence were fatal to her preserver. On the third day my mother sickened. Her fever was accompanied by the most alarming symptoms, and the looks of her medical attendants prognosticated the worst event. On her deathbed, the fortitude and benignity of the best woman did not desert her. She joined the hands of Elizabeth and myself. "My children," she said, "my finest hopes of future happiness were placed on the prospect of your union. This expectation will now be the consolation of your father. Elizabeth, my love, you must supply my place to my younger children. Alas, I regret that I am taken from you, and happy and beloved as I have been, it is hard not to quit you all. But these are not thoughts befitting of me. I will endeavour to resign myself cheerfully to death, and will indulge a hope of meeting you all in the other world." She died calmly, and her countenance expressed affection even in death. I needed not describe her feelings of those whose dearest ties are rent by most inseparable evil. The void that presented itself to the soul, and the despair that exhibited on the countenance. It is so long before the mind can persuade itself that she whom we saw every day, and whose very existence appeared a part of our own, have departed forever. Hello, Noko-chan. Hello. I can't quit you. That should be something we bring back to the normal English lexicon. Rather than saying I love you, we'll say I can't quit you. I love this game so much I cannot quit it. That brightness of a beloved eye can have been the brightness of a beloved eye can have been extinguished, and the sound of a voice so familiar and dear to the ear can be hushed, never more to be heard. These reflections of the first days, but when the lapse of time proves the reality of the evil, then the actual bitterness of grief commences. Yet from whom has not that rude hand rent away some dear connection? And why should I describe a sorrow which all have felt and must feel? That time at length arrives when grief is rather an indulgence than a necessity, and the smile that plays upon the lips, although it may be deemed a sacrilege, is not banished. My mother was dead, but we had still our duties, which we ought to perform. We must continue our course with the rest, and learn to think for ourselves, fortunate while one remains whom the spoiler has not seized. My departure for that word that I don't want to pronounce again, which had been deferred by these new events, was now again determined upon. I obtained from my father a respite of some weeks. It appeared to me sacrilege so soon to leave the repose, akin to death, of the house of mourning, and to rush into the thick of life. I was new to sorrow, but it did not the less harm me. I was unwilling to quit the sight of those that remained to me. Above all, I desired to see my sweet Elizabeth in some degree consoled. She indeed veiled her grief and strove to act the comforter to us all. She looked steadily on life and assumed its duties with courage and zeal. She devoted herself to those whom she had been taught to call her uncle and cousins. Never was she so enchanting as this time when she recalled the sunshine of her smiles and spent them upon us. She forgot even her own regret in her endeavours to make us forget. The day of my departure had arrived. Clerval spent the last evening with us. He had endeavoured to persuade his father to permit him to accompany me, and to become my fellow student, but in vain. His father was a narrow-minded trader, and saw idleness and ruin in the aspirations and ambitions of his son. Henry deeply felt the misfortune of being debarred from a liberal education, and said little when we spoke. I read in his kindling eye, in the animated glance, a restrained but firm resolve not to be chained to the miserable details of commerce. We sat late. We could not tear ourselves away from each other, nor persuade ourselves to say the final word, farewell. It was said, and we retired under the pretence of seeking repose, each fancying that the other was deceived. But when at morning's dawn I descended to the carriage, which was to convey me away, they were all there. My father again to bless me, Civil to press my hand once more, my Elizabeth to renew her entreaties that I would write often and bestow the last feminine attentions on her playmate and friend. I threw myself into the the carriage, most likely, yes. And that was to convey me away, and indulged in the most melancholy reflections. I, who had been surrounded by amiable companions, continually engaged in endeavouring to bestow mutual pleasure, I was now alone. In the university whither I was going, I must form my own friends, and be my own protector. My life had hitherto been remarkably secluded and domestic, and this had given me invincible repugnance to new countermeasures. I loved my brothers, Elizabeth, Clerval, I'm not sure which is the correct pronunciation there. These were old familiar faces, but I believed myself totally unfitted for the company of strangers. Such were my reflections as I commenced my journey. But as I proceeded, my spirits and hopes rose. I ardently desired the acquisition of knowledge, and I had often, when I was at home, thought it hard to remain during my youth cooped up in one place, and had longed to enter the world and take my station among other human beings. Invincible repugnance. If you're not sure, shall we have Luke? Repugnance means intense disgust. Invincible disgust. No, I am not sure what the author is trying to convey with that either, but it sounds nice, does it not? I tried translating that sentence into modern English, and I only kind of understand it. Yes, I somewhat get the vibe. I believe this means invincible repugnance. I believe this means he looks, potentially because he looks down on people. He has quite high, how would you call it? Personal walls? He is guarded. He is a guarded fellow. I believe that is what he is trying to convey with that. Invincible repugnance means he's guarded. He does not come across well, I suppose, maybe. That's what I believe it is trying to say. Yes, they look down on people. Invincible repugnance. No one can get to him. Yes. Given me invincible repugnance to new countenances, I believe, would just be other people, and new things that he has not seen. A countenance itself is a person's face or facial expression. Ah, I see. Because he looks down on people, he is immune to new people, new faces, new situations. That is what he's trying to say. Is that he's built his inner walls quite high, and he is quite invulnerable to people potentially coming across a bit mean or anything like that. He's developed a thick skin and high walls. He is guarded. Now my desires were complied with, it would indeed have been folly to repent. I have suffered. Yes, he's jaded! Oh, that's the correct word, Jake. Thank you. He's jaded. Yes, I mean, sometimes the language here can be somewhat difficult. I mean, it is very old. Hello, Alfie, welcome. And Asta, welcome. So if you are confused about any of the language, please feel free to put it in the chat and we can all figure it out together. Yes, we are modern people here and we have modern sensibilities. This book does not have modern sensibilities, so it is natural that we would get confused every so often. Yes. Hey, Witch Briny, what do you think about marshmallows? I used to really love eating them straight out of the bag. Straight out of the bag is a bit much. They're a little too sweet for me in that respect. I would much prefer them in a hot chocolate, or roasted on a fire, melted in something or other, or covered in chocolate. That is also a wonderful way to enjoy a marshmallow. There is a restaurant that I have frequented, that has a dessert on the menu, which is, you get a tiny little fire that comes to your table, and you can roast a marshmallow on it, and stick it in some melted chocolate. Yes. What's the longest book I've read so far? I feel like I've had this question. Yes. And I believe it was one of the Bleach light novels, yes. The second and third books are quite chunky. So I believe it would be those. It's my body. Yes, my body. I had sufficient leisure for these and many other reflections during my journey to the place that I cannot pronounce, which was long and fatiguing. At length the high white steeple of the town met my eyes. I alighted and was conducted to my solitary apartment to spend the evening as I pleased. I have the greatest hat that I think will suit you. The name Briny Rose Smith is embroidered on the inside. Would you like to try it on? No, not right now. I do quite like the hat I am putting on, but thank you, Boris. I highly appreciate it. The next morning I delivered my letters of introduction and paid a visit to some of the principal professors. Chance, or rather evil influence, the angel of destruction which asserted omnipotent sway over the moment I turned my reluctant steps from my father's door, led me first to M. Kremp, professor of natural philosophy. He was an uncouth man, but deeply imbued in the secrets of his science. He asked me several questions concerning my progress in the different branches of science appertaining to natural philosophy. I replied carelessly, and partly in contempt, mentioned the names of my alchemists as the principal authors I had studied. The professor stared. "Have you," he said, "really spent time studying such nonsense?" I replied in an affirmative. "Every minute," continued M. Kremp with warmth. "Every instant that you've wasted on those books is entirely lost. You have burdened your memory with exploded systems and useless names. Good God! In what desert land have you lived, where no one was kind enough to inform you that these fancies, which you have so greedily imbibed, are thousands of years old, and as musty as they are ancient? I little expected in this enlightened and scientific age to find a disciple of Albertus Magnus and Paracelsus. My dear sir, you must begin your studies entirely anew." So saying, he stepped aside and wrote down a list of several books treating of natural philosophy which he desired me to procure, and dismissed me after mentioning that in the beginning of the following week he intended to commence a course of lectures upon natural philosophies in its general relations, that M. Waldman, a fellow professor, would lecture upon chemistry. The alternated days he omitted. Paracelsus, Paracelsus. Pronunciation, thank you, Asta. Yes, he very much got dunked then. Ye old burn, would you like some ye old burn cream for that, Victor? Paracelsus. Oh, that makes more sense. Paracelsus. No, who do? I returned home not disappointed, for I have said that I had long considered those authors useless, whom the professor but I returned not all the more inclined to recur to these studies in any shape. M. Kremp was a little squat man with a gruff voice and a repulsive countenance. The teacher, therefore, did not prepossess me in favour of his pursuits. In rather a too philosophical and connected a strain, perhaps I have given an account of my conclusions I had come to concerning them in my early years. As a child, I had not been content with the results promised by the modern professors of natural science, with the confusion of ideas only to be accounted for by my extreme youth and my want of a guide on such matters. I had retrod the steps of knowledge along the paths of time, and exchanged the discoveries of recent inquirers for the dreams of forgotten alchemists. Besides, I had a contempt for the uses of modern natural philosophy. It was very different when the masters of science sought immortality and power. Such views, though futile, were grand. But now the scene had changed. The ambition of the inquirer seemed to limit itself to the annihilation of those visions of which my interest in science was chiefly founded. I was required to exchange chimeras of boundless grandeur for realities of little worth. Such were my reflections during the first 2 or 3 days of my residence in, oh no, it has been said many a time, Inglostated. That's what I'm going to call it from now on, if it's going to keep coming up so many times. Which were chiefly spent in becoming acquainted with the localities and the principal residents of my new abode. But as the ensuing weeks commenced, I thought of the information which M. Kemp had given me concerning the lectures. Although I could not consent to go and hear that little conceited fellow deliver sentences out of a pulpit, I recollected that he said of Emma Wildman, whom I had never seen, as he had hitherto been out of town. Partly from curiosity and partly from idleness, I went into the lecture room, which Emma Waldman entered shortly after. This professor was very unlike his colleague. He appeared about 50 years of age, but with an aspect of expressive and greatest benevolence. A few grey hairs covered his temples, but those at the back of his head were nearly black. His person was short, but remarkably erect, and his voice was the sweetest I had ever heard. He began his lecture by recapping the history of chemistry and the various improvements made by different men of learning, pronouncing with fervour the names of the most distinguished discoverers. He took a cursory view of the present state of science and explained many of its elementary terms. After having made a few preparatory experiments, he concluded with a panegyric upon modern chemistry, the terms of which I shall never forget. The ancient teachers of this science, he said, promised impossibilities and performed nothing. The modern masters promise very little. They know that metals cannot be transmuted, and that the elixir of life is a chimera. But these philosophers, whose hands seem only to make dabble in dirt, and their eyes pore over the microscope or crucible, have indeed performed miracles. They penetrate into the recesses of nature, and show how she works in her hiding places. They ascend into the heavens. They have discovered how the blood circulates, how the nature of the air we breathe, and the nature of the air we breathe. They have acquired new and almost unlimited powers. They can command the thunder of the heavens, mimic the earthquakes, and even mock the invisible world with its own shadows. So the two natural philosophers he studies intently are from the 1200s and the 1500s respectively, and I believe this book takes place in the 1700s. Yes, he is going to some really old books, because I believe Paracelsus is what I've heard of. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that would be a Greek man, is it not? He would be a Greek doctor, if I believe so. He is the reason that we have the snake on the snake and the pole for a medical symbol. I apologize that that's not great. My history is spotty at most because I learned most of it from Fate Grand Order. Aster, you have a big vocabulary. You know the big words. Well done. 10 out of 10. I wish I could give you a gold star. Just a minute. I'd like to get some hydration, yes. Wonderful. Such were the professor's words. Rather, let me say, such the words of the fate. announced to destroy me. As he went on, I felt as if my soul were grappling with a palpable enemy. One by one, the various keys were being touched, which formed the mechanism of my being. Chord after chord was sounded, and soon my mind was filled with one thought, one conception, one purpose. So much has been done, exclaimed the soul of Frankenstein. More, far more I will achieve. Treading in the steps already marked, I will pioneer a new way, explore unknown powers, and unfold to the world the deepest mysteries of creation. I closed my eyes that night. My internal being was in a state of insurrection and turmoil. Oh, yes, I'm thinking about Alska. Yes. Parcellus was an apothecary or something during the resonance. Oh, yes, you're correct. I have gotten mixed up. Oh, yes, he was also in Fate Grand Order, though. Yes, he was. He was in the London chapter, yes. And his Noble Phantasm is like a big beam thing, which is very interesting for a caster, as that is usually more of a Sabers thing. They are both in Fate Grand Order, and I got confused between them. You are correct, Asta. Correct. You are smart. Asta has the big brain, yes. Yes, we have learned a thing today, and I have stopped mixing up two historical figures in my mind. Yes. I closed my eyes that night. My internal being was in a state of insurrection and turmoil. I felt that world order would thence arise, but I had no power to produce it. By degrees, after the morning's dawn, sleep came. I awoke, and my yesternight's thoughts were as a dream. There only remained a resolution to return to my ancient studies and devote myself to a science for which I believed myself to possess a natural talent. On the same day, I paid Emma Waldman a visit. His manners in private were even more mild and attractive than in public, for there was a certain dignity in his mien during his lectures, which in his own house was replaced by the greatest affability and kindness. I gave him pretty nearly the same account of my former pursuits as I had given his fellow professor. He heard with attention the little narration concerning my studies, and smiled at the names of Cornelius Agrippa and Paracelsus, but without the contempt of M. Crepe had exhibited. He said, these were the men whose indefatigable zeal modern philosophers were indebted for most of the foundations of their knowledge. They had left us as an easier task to give new names and arrange in connected classification the facts which they, in great degree, had been the instruments of bringing to life. The labours of men of genius, however erroneously directed, scarcely ever fail in ultimately turning the solid disadvantage of mankind. I listened to his statements, which was delivered without any presumptions or affection, and then added that his lecture had removed my prejudices against modern chemists. I expressed myself in measured terms, with the modesty and deference due from a youth to his instructor. That is smart to do, Boris. It is a good way to learn. And it is never never too late to learn things. It is always fun. You learn something every day. Without letting escape an experience in life would make me ashamed. Any of the enthusiasm which stimulated the intended labours. I requested his advice concerning the books I ought to procure. I am happy, says M. Waldman, to have gained a disciple, and if your application equals your ability, I have no doubt of your success. Chemistry is that branch of natural philosophy in which the greatest improvements have been made. It is on that account that I have made a particular study, but at the same time I have not neglected the other branches of science. A man would make a very sorry chemist if he attended that department of human knowledge alone. If your wish is to become really a man of science, and not merely a petty experimentalist, I should advise you to apply every branch of natural philosophy, including mathematics. He then took me into his laboratory and explained to me the uses of his various machines, instructing me as to what I ought to procure, and promising me in the use of his own, when I should have advanced far enough in the science not to derange their mechanisms. He also gave me a list of books which I had requested, and I took my leave. Thus ended a day memorable to me. It decided my future destiny. Yes, I believe these streams might be quite difficult for those who are not English first speakers, natural English speakers. Although if you are watching this and you are following along, and English is not your first language, then give yourself a rather big pat on the back, because not only is, learning English understandably as not a first language incredibly impressive anyway, you are now learning and reading how long ago was this book out? Far too long, most likely. Let me give a quick Google. When was Frankenstein written? Well, published more like, I suppose. 1818. So this is a near 200-year-old book. Well, over 200 years old. So, of course, the language is a little bit strange. I had to look up a fair number of English, as an English main. For folks, is it not your partner child? Yes, and I know there is a few in my fandom, yes. And English is my first language. I'm just very bad at it sometimes. But that's okay. We all have our weaknesses. We're all learning together. Chapter 4. How long are we on? Old German. Oh, well, that would be English. Same, Jake, same. Yeah, we got a few. Asta, how are you in the dyslexic gang? You're so smart. Not that dyslexic can't be smart. That is not what I was trying to say. I'll take that back a hot second. But I was more saying that you seem to have a wonderful understanding of words despite your dyslexia, which is very impressive. Well done, Asta. Well done. Sorry for the bad phrasing there. Yes. Yes, I do apologize. That was not meant to be like that. Yes. Oh, yes. Dyslexic gang, rise up. I'm just bad at it in general. Oh, this is... I can't wait for when do we actually get to the monster? We're only 16% of the way through. It would be nice if we could at least get to 20 before the end of the stream, don't you think? So let's go! Chapter 4. From this day, natural philosophy, and particularly chemistry, in the most comprehensive senses of the term, became nearly my sole occupation. I read with ardour whose works, so full of genius and discrimination with modern inquiries, have written on these subjects. I attended lectures and cultivated the acquaintance of the men of science of the university. I found even in M. Krempe a great deal of sound sense and real information, combined in, it is true, with a repulsive physiognomy and manners, but not on that account the less valuable. In M. Waldman I found a true friend. His gentleness was never tinged by dogmatism, and his instructions were given with an air of frankness and good nature, and banished every idea of pedantry. In 1,000 ways he smoothed for me up the path of knowledge, and made the most abstruse inquiries clear and facile to my apprehension. My application was at first fluctuating and uncertain. It gained strength as I proceeded, and soon became so ardent and eager that the stars often disappeared in the light of morning, whilst I was yet engaged in my laboratory. Perhaps the monster is the friends we made along the way. Oh, that's wonderful. I would like to make some monster friends along the way. And then we could destroy the world together. Yes! As I applied so closely, it may be easily convinced that my progress was rapid. My ardour was indeed the astonishment of the students, and my proficiency that of the masters. Professor Krempe often asked me with a sly smile how Cornelius Agrippa went on, whilst M. Waldman expressed the most heartfelt exultations in my progress. I see no issues on my end. I think you may be having some issues with your internet, Void. I was a little bit worried that there could be some issues, but it does not seem to be. Yes. Check your internet, Void. Check your internet. Two years passed in this manner, during which I paid no visit to Geneva, but was engaged heart and soul in the pursuit of some discoveries which I hoped to make. None of those who have experienced them can conceive the excitements of science. In other studies you go as far as others have gone before you, and there is nothing more to know. But in a scientific pursuit there is a continual food for discovery and wonder. A mind of a moderate capacity, which closely pursues one study, must fallibly arrive at great proficiency in that study. And I, who continually sought the attainment of one object of pursuit, and was solely wrapped up in this, improved so rapidly that at the end of 2 years I made some discoveries in the improvement of some chemical instruments, which procured me great esteem and admiration at the university. When I arrived at this point, and had become as well acquainted with the theory and practice of natural philosophy as depended on the lesson of any of the professors at Ingolstadt, my residence there being no longer conducive to my improvements, I thought about returning to my friends and my native town, when an incident happened that protracted my stay. One of the phenomena which had peculiarly attracted my attention was the structure of the human frame, and indeed any animal endured with life. Whence I often asked, did the principle of life proceed? It was a bold question, and one which has been ever considered as a mystery. Yet, how many things are we upon the brink of becoming acquainted, if cowardice or carelessness does not restrain our inquiries? I resolved these circumstances in my mind, and determined henceforth to apply myself more particularly to those branches of natural philosophy which related to physiology. Hello, ye to God! Indeed it has been a little while. Welcome back. We are here for some Frankenstein, and you haven't missed the monster, so don't worry. Gosh, imagine how cool it would be to call yourself a natural philosopher. I believe, yes, we have so many other different words for a natural philosopher nowadays. Now we have geologists and chemists and physicists and so many words for them. Yes. Unless I had been animated by a most supernatural enthusiasm, my application to this study would have been irksome and most intolerable. To examine the causes of life, we must have recourse to death. I became acquainted with the science of anatomy, but this was not sufficient. I must also observe the natural decay and corruption of the human body. In my education, my father had taken the greatest precautions that my mind should be immersed with no supernatural horrors. I do not ever remember to have trembled at the tale of superstition, or to have feared the apparition of a spirit. Darkness had no effect upon my fancy, and a churchyard was to me merely a receptacle of bodies deprived of life, which, from the beginning... Am I going to stream on the 18th? Let me check. What is the 18th? The 18th is a Wednesday. So no, unfortunately, I will not be streaming on the 18th, ye to God. I apologize. That is D&D Day. I must keep it clear. Seat of beauty and strength, and had become food for worms. Now I was led to examine the cause and progress of this decay, and forced to spend days and nights in vaults and charnel houses. My attention was fixed upon every object the most insupportable to the delicacy of human feelings. Oh yes, I mean, I suppose that isn't really a degree for a natural philosopher nowadays. So it's likely you could just claim the title anyway. And if you really felt like you needed a piece of paper to tell you that you are one, you could always print out a fake degree from the internet and just say, look, I am a natural philosopher now. Ho ho ho! Don't do this to jobs, though. Don't lie to jobs. My attention was fixed by Bear. I saw how the fine form of man was degraded and wasted. I beheld the corruption of death succeeded to the blooming cheek of life. I saw how the worm inherited the wonders of the eye and brain. I paused, examining and analyzing all the minute of causation, and exemplified the change from life to death. Because it's your birthday, well, do remind me close to the time, and I will either give you an early or belated birthday, depending on whether you can be there on a stream before or afterwards, and I will make sure to wish you a happy birthday for them. You have been born in spooky month. May you be blessed. You have a rhetorical degree in physics. I like that. I'm sure the hiring people, the job people, the interviewers, that is the word I was looking for, would absolutely love that. And they'd be like, oh, you mean a degree in theoretical physics? Like, no, a theoretical degree in physics. Ho, 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 ho. I paused, examining and analyzing the minute causations as exemplified in the change from life to death and death to life, until from the midst of that darkness a sudden light broke in upon me, a light so brilliant and wondrous yet so simple, that I became dizzy with the immensity of the prospect which it illustrated. I was surprised that among so many men of genius, who had dedicated their inquiries towards the same science, that I alone should be reserved to discover this astonishing secret. Remember, I am not recording the vision of a madman. The sun does not more certainly shine in the heavens than that which I now affirm is true. Some miracle night had procured it, yet the stages of discovery were distinct and probable. After days and nights of incredible labour and fatigue, I succeeded in discovering the cause of generation and life. Nay, more, I became capable of bestowing animation upon lifeless matter. The astonishment which I had first experienced on this discovery soon gave place to delight and rapture. After so much time spent in painful labour to arrive at once at the summit of my desires was the most gratifying consummation of my toils. But this discovery was so great and overwhelming that all the steps by which I had been progressively led to it were obliterated, and I beheld myself only the result. What had been the study and desire of the wisest men since the creation of the world was now within my grasp. Not that, like a magic scene, it all opened up to me at once. The information I had obtained was the natural, or rather to direct my endeavours, as soon as I should point them towards the object of my search, than to exhibit that object already accomplished. I was like an Arabian who had been buried with the dead and found a passage to life, aided by one glimmering and seemingly ineffectual light. I see by your eagerness and wonder and hope which your eyes express, my friend, that you expect to be informed of the secret with which I am acquainted. That cannot be. Listen patiently until the end of my story, and you will easily perceive why I am reserved upon the subject. I will not lead you on, unguarded and ardent as I then was, your destruction and infallible misery. Learn from me, if not by my precepts, at least by my example, how dangerous is the acquirement of knowledge, and how much happier that man who believes his native town to be the world, than the one who aspires to become greater than his nature will allow. Yes, as much as the language can be a bit tricky and there are some words that trip me up, it is quite wonderful the way they flow together. There has been extra care taken on the prose of these books, I feel, to make it flow in such a way that it just sounds pleasing to read. The words just go together in an almost lyrical fashion to make it very, very pleasing to read, yes. Halfway through a psychology master's degree, Asta. Very impressive. That is incredibly impressive. A master's be hard, especially in one such as psychology. That is probably a lot of different concepts to learn at the same time, and then essay writing is a giant pain in the buttocks. I have not had to do it in a very long time. You also said you were dyslexic, which probably makes it 100 times harder, so yes, Aster. Yes, you go and kick your master's ass. Wait, no, not like that. Wait, I don't know. You're doing very well. That is all I am trying to say. You're doing incredibly well. Boris is right. And Boris, when you did an accounting major, are you doing an accounting major? Or did you do one? You did one with lots of numbers, yes? That also is impressive. You didn't hear me. You didn't hear me say anything. What do you want about? I'm gonna go read again. You guys are wonderful. These streams are so much fun, yes. You're all wonderful. Anyway. You have 2 years in accounting and about 5 years in public and industry experience. Oh, wonderful. Writing is harder when I don't know how to be descriptive. Very basic in storytelling. Description is hard and honestly not always necessary, I believe. I mean, think about Frankenstein at the moment and the actual descriptions we've had. We've had barely any, really. When it comes to the show don't tell, this book is actually a terrible example. It is all telling. It is literally a man telling another man exactly what is going on, rather than describing things. Yes, we've had some descriptions. We've had very particular and well-chosen words to paint a picture in very few. But it doesn't have to be large parts of description. I personally am not a fan of books that tend to have big, lengthy descriptions, and they feel the need to describe things in paragraphs, and it's just like, no, just give us that one little sentence and let the mind do the rest. The mind is powerful. Honestly, Frankenstein is a better book than 90% of people can create, but you shouldn't be trying to create something better. You should be looking at it for inspiration. Do not compare yourself to a classic. However, look at it for inspiration. There is a reason it became a classic in the first place. So what you can do is pin down what it did and then try emulate it somewhat. And that is how you improve on things. It's the same with drawing and things like that. You look up how other artists did things and things like that, and you find different techniques and you apply them to your own work. Creative stuff. Oh, a subscriber! Thank you so much! I'm so glad you are enjoying the stream. Thank you for subscribing. Honestly, I couldn't write anything in human science, liberal arts, STEM fields, on the other hand, involve a lot of numbers. I love numbers. They are easy to handle. Yes, I do understand what you mean by the numbers. There is no wrong answer in numbers. Well, there is a wrong. No, there's no, wait. Let me rephrase that a hot second. What I meant to say is there is a right and a wrong answer with numbers. But there is no weird in-betweens. There is no wrong interpretations and things like that. There is just a right and a wrong, so I can see where you're coming from. As someone who is a computer scientist, or at least this body is a computer scientist, then I do agree the numbers are somewhat easier, she says. She says it as an author, but shh. And that's absolutely fine, Void Dweller. Writing is always a little bit of a experiment, and you build confidence as you go. All you have to do is keep at it. Just keep trying. Keep experimenting. I wouldn't say my writing is perfect. You've read Moon Galwan, and you know. You know that there are some questionable word choices in that book. But I continue anyway, and I continue to write, and it is fun, and you improve as you go. Practice makes perfect in all things. All I have to do is be a stubborn boo, and continue. I read that paragraph. My dyslexia hinders my number reasoning the most, funnily enough, or unfortunately. I think I compensate with language. Oh, well that's interesting. There is a number dyslexia, is there not? A kind of dyslexia that specifically goes for numbers? In fact, the fact you're trying for it is already a huge leap over many other people. Man, they say they want to write, never put pen to paper. Yes, Void, exactly. You just have to be a stubborn bar steward and keep at it. It's something I always vowed when I was younger. When I was in high school and I knew I would have to grow up one day. And most of the adults I knew, none of them drew. None of them wrote or did seemingly anything creative other than a sport, maybe. I vowed I would still do it. I vowed I would never let go of such things. And here we are. Creative things for a living. Yay! So keep your dreams. Do not let them go just because you're an adult. Dyscalculia, yes, that's the one. Typo is one of the first illusionary dreams in the moment. Some misspellings, but overall good. Yes. I find spelling hard. E and I get mixed up, for example, which makes me frustrated. It's mild lucky, but once I spire on a word, that's it, I give up. That is fair. My spelling is not great either. I find that no matter how hard I try, I can't seem to write anything that does not have mistakes in it. Oh, is it frustrating? But I don't care, I need to write. I have too many ideas, and they must come out somehow, or my brain might explode. And that would be rather counterproductive to my life. When I found so astonishing a powerful placed within my hands, I hesitated a long time concerning the manner in which I should employ it. Although I possessed the capacity of bestowing animation, yet to prepare a frame for the reception of it, with all its intricacies of fibers, muscles, and veins, still remained a work of incomparable difficulty and labor. I doubted at first whether I should attempt the creation of a being like myself, or one of simpler organization. But my imagination was too exalted by my first success to permit me to doubt of my ability to give life to an animal as complex and wonderful as man. The materials at present within my command hardly appeared adequate to so arduous an undertaking, but I doubted not that I should ultimately succeed. I prepared myself for a multitude of reserves. Oh, there's a bug on my screen. Go away, bug. Yes, there we go. My operations might be incessantly baffled. Jurgen Drago channel. Discovered your channel. It's cool that your goal is to read or review 1,000 books. Well, thank you. I don't know whether we'll actually do it, but you know what? It's nice to have a goal and a motivation to read books. It's wonderful. I prepared myself. What's your verbs? Yet, when I considered the improvement which every day takes place in science and mechanisms, I was encouraged to hope my present attempts would at least lay the foundations of future success. Nor could I consider the magnitude and complexity of my plans as any argument of its impracticability. It was with these feelings that I began the creation of a human being. As the minuteness and of the parts formed a great hindrance to my speed, I resolved, contrary to my first intention, to make the being of a gigantic stature, that is to say, about 8 feet in height, and proportionately large. After having formed this determination, and having spent some months successfully collecting, arranging my materials, I began. No one can convince the variety of feelings which bore me onwards. Like a hurricane in the first enthusiasm of success, life and death appeared to me ideal bounds which I should first break through the poor torrent of light into a dark world. A new species would bless me as its creator. A source many happy and excellent natures would owe their being to me. No father could claim the gratitude of his child so completely as I should deserve theirs. Pursuing these reflections, I thought that if I could bestow animation upon lifeless matter, I might, in process of time, although I now found it impossible, renew life where death had apparently devoted the body to corruption. Yes, he is now already dreaming of resurrection, not just creating life. These thoughts supported my spirits while I pursued my undertakings with unremitted ardour. My cheek had grown pale with study, and my person had become emancipated with confinement. Sometimes on the very brink of certainty I failed, yet I still clung to the hope which the next day or the next hour might realize. Once secret, which I alone possessed, was the hope to which I had dedicated myself. And the moon gazed on my midnight labours, while with unrelaxed and breathless eagerness I pursued nature to her hiding places. Who shall conceive the horrors of my secret toil? I dabbled among the unhallowed damps of the grave, or tortured living animals to animate the lifeless clay. My limbs now tremble, and my eyes swim with the remembrance. But then a resistless and almost frantic impulse urged me forwards. I seemed to have lost all soul or sensation, but for this one pursuit. I was indeed but a passing trance. The only made me feel with renewed acuteness, so as soon the unnatural stimulus ceased to operate. I had returned to my old habits. I collected bones from charnel houses and distributed and disturbed with profane fingers the tremendous secrets of the human frame. Nice. In a solitary chamber, or rather a cell at the top of the house, and separated from all the other apartments of a gallery and staircase, I kept my workshop of filthy creation. My eyeballs were staring from their sockets in attending to the details of my employment. The dissecting room and the slaughterhouse furnished many of my materials, and often did my human nature turn with loathing from my occupation, while still urged by an eagerness which perpetually increased. I brought my work near to conclusion. Your baking compulsion? Oh no! That is a wonderful corruption, though. A very sweet corruption. What wondrous baking things have you made recently, Ibram? I would like to know. I like me some sweets. I need a drink, though. Oh. Oh. The summer months passed while I was thus engaged, heart and soul in one pursuit. It was a most beautiful season. Never did the fields bestow a more plentiful harvest, or the vines yield a more luxuriant vintage. But my eyes were insensible to the charms of nature, and the same feeling which made me neglect the scenes around me caused me to also forget those friends who were also many miles absent, and whom I had not seen for a long time. I knew my silence disquieted them, and I well remembered the words of my father. I know that while you are pleased with yourself, you will think of us with affection, and we shall hear regularly from you. You must pardon me if I regard any interruption in your correspondence as proof that your other duties are equally neglected. A rhubarb cake. Ooh, very nice. That sounds lovely. I knew well, therefore, what would be my father's feelings, but I could not tear my thoughts from my employment, loathsome in itself, but which had taken an irresistible hold my imagination. I wished, as it were, to procrastinate all that related to my feelings of affection, until the great object, which swallowed up every habit of my nature, should be completed. I then thought that my father would be unjust if he had ascribed my neglect to vice, or faultiness on my part, but I am now convinced that he was justified in conceiving that I should not be altogether free from blame. A human being in perfection ought always to preserve a calm, peaceful mind, and never allow passion or transitory desire to disturb his tranquillity. I do not think that the pursuit of knowledge is an exception to this rule. If the study to which you apply yourself has a tendency to weaken your affections and destroy your taste for those simple pleasures in which no alloy can possibly mix, then that study is certainly unlawful. That is to say, not benefiting the human mind. If this rule were always observed, if no man allowed pursuit whatsoever to interfere with the tranquillity of his domestic affairs, Greece had not been enslaved. Caesar would have spared his country, America would have been discovered more gradually, and the empires of Mexico and Peru had not been destroyed. But I forget that I am moralizing in the most interesting part of my tale, and your looks remind me to proceed. Ooh, sounds lovely, Bryn. My father made no reproach in his letters, and only took notice of my silence by inquiring into my occupations, more particularly than before. Winter, spring, and summer passed away during my labours, but I did not watch the blossom or expanding leaves, sights which before always yielded me supreme delight. So deeply I was engrossed in my occupation, the leaves of that year withered before my work drew near to a close, and now every day showed me more plainly how well I had succeeded. But my enthusiasm was checked by my anxiety, and I appeared rather like one doomed by slavery to toil in the mines, or any other unwholesome trade that an artist occupied by his favourite employment. Every night I was oppressed by a slow fervour, and I became nervous to a most painful degree. The fall of a leaf startled me, and I shunted my fellow creatures as if I had been guilty of a crime. Sometimes I grew alarmed at the wreck I perceived that I had become. The energy of my purpose alone sustained me. My labours would soon end, and I believed that exercise and amusement would then drive away the incipient disease. And I promised myself both of these when my creation should be complete. But oh no. I think we can go on a bit longer this evening, you know. Normally I would be thinking about wrapping up, but I'm happy to throw on another bit of time for this evening. I'm getting quite into this. I have no particular reason to stop. Oh, the power! The power! I can stream as long as I want to, but unfortunately this body does need sleep at some point. But it doesn't need it right now, so I'm gonna keep reading. Chapter 5. It was on that dreary night in November that I beheld the accomplishment of my toils. With an anxiety that almost amounted to agony, I collected the instruments of life around me. Yes, that was the briny version of that. But actually, before I really get into this, what I'm going to do is refill my bottle of water here, because I have already downed it all. So I will be right back. And then we will have at least the next chapter, because it looks like he's going to awaken. And it's going to be thrilling. I can't wait. Be right back. I'm back. I hope you weren't discussing crimes against libraries and rearranging books and changing things while I was gone. I do hope that was not what you were saying. Thank you. I have hydration now and we can continue. My throat is not going to die. You wouldn't dream it, good, I'm glad. Chapter 5, yes, let us resurrect the monster, yes. It was on a dreary I'm going to start the chapter again, since I kind of got into it and thought about it later. Well, I can get away with it because, well, I'm not being loud, am I? No, you can just turn me down and then I'm not loud. It's your fault if I'm being loud. You're the one with the volume control. I don't have any say in this. Hi, Witch Brady, we're all perfectly well behaved. Yes, of course you are. You're all wonderfully obedient assistants and worms, aren't you? Yes. I do need to actually dedicate to calling you one of those, but I don't know, it's strange. But here we go. Let's res a monster. It was on a dreary night in November that I beheld the accomplishment of my toils. With an anxiety that almost amounted to agony, I collected the instruments of life around me, that I might infuse a spark of being into the lifeless thing that lay at my feet. It was already 1 a.m, and rain pattered dismally against the panes, and my candle was nearly burnt out, when, by the glimmer of the half-extinguished light, I saw the dull yellow eye of the creature open. It breathed hard, and convulsed motion agitated limbs. How can I describe my emotions at this catastrophe? Or how delicate the wretch whom with such infinite pains and care had endeavoured to form. His limbs were in proportion, and I had selected his features as beautiful, great God! His yellow skin scarcely covered the work of muscles and arteries beneath, his hair of a lustrous black and flowing, his teeth of pearly whites, but these luxuriancy only formed a more horrid contrast with his watery eyes, that seemed almost of the same colour as the dun white sockets in which they were set, his shrivelled complexion and straight black lips. The different accidents of life are not so changeable as the feelings of human nature. I worked hard for nearly 2 years for the sole purpose of infusing life into an inanimate body. For this I had deprived myself of rest and health. I had desired it with an ardour that far exceeded moderation, but now that I had finished, the beauty of the dream vanished, and breathless horror and disgust filled my heart. Unable to endure the aspect of the being I had created, I rushed out of the room and continued a long time traversing my bedchamber, unable to compose my mind to sleep. At length, lassitude succeeded to the tumult I had endured, and I threw myself on the bed in my clothes, endeavouring to seek a few moments of forgetfulness. But it was in vain. I slept, indeed, but I was disturbed by the wildest dreams. I thought I saw Elizabeth, in the bloom of health, walking the streets of Ingolstadt. Delighted and surprised, I embraced her, but as I imprinted the first kiss upon her lips, they became livid with the hue of death. Her features appeared to change, and although I had held the corpse of my dead mother in my arms, a shroud enveloped her form, and I saw the grave worms crawling in the folds of the flannel. I startled from my sleep with horror. Cold dew covered my forehead. My teeth chattered, and every limb became convulsed. When, by the dim and yellow light of the moon, as it forced its way through the window shutters, I beheld the wretch, the miserable monster whom I had created. He held up a curtain of the bed, and his eyes, if eyes they may be called, were fixed on me. His jaws opened, and he muttered some inarticulate sounds, while a grin wrinkled his cheeks. He might have spoken, but I did not hear. One hand was stretched out, seemingly to detain me, but I escaped and rushed downstairs. I took refuge in the courtyard belonging to the house which I inhabited, where I remained during the rest of the night, walking up and down in the greatest agitation, listening attentively, catching and fearing each sound, as if it were to announce the approach of that demoniacal corpse to which I had so miserably given life. No mortal could support the horror of that countenance. A mummy again endured with animation could not be so hideous as that wretch. I had gazed on him while unfinished. He was ugly then, but when those muscles and joints were rendered capable of motion, it became such a thing such as Dante could not have conceived. I passed the night wretchedly. Sometimes my pulse beat so quickly I hardly felt the palpitations of each artery. At others I nearly sank to the ground through languor and extreme weakness. Mingled with this horror, I felt the bitterness of disappointment. Dreams that had been food and pleasant rest for so long a space were now become a hell to me, and the change was so rapid, to overthrow so complete. He is entirely necrophobic, yes. Morning dismissal and wet at length dawned and discovered to my sleepless and aching eyes the church of Ingolstadt, its white steeple and clock which indicated the 6th hour. The porter opened the gates of the court, which had that night been my asylum, and I issued into the streets, pacing them the quickest steps, as if I sought to avoid the wretch whom I feared every turning of the street would present into my view. I did not dare return to the apartment which I inhabited, but felt imperilled to hurry on, although drenched by the rain which poured from a black and comfortless sky. I know they mean like historic Dante, but I did first imagine Devil May Cry Dante. Yes, so that is the first Dante everyone should think of, really. I continued walking in this manner for some time, endeavouring my bodily exercise to ease the load that weighed upon my mind. I traversed the streets without any clear conception of where I was or what I was doing.
My heart palpitated in the sickness of fear, and I hurried with irregular steps, not daring to look about me. Like one who, on a lonely road, doth walk in fear and dread, and having once turned around, walks on, and turns no more his head, because he knows a frightful fiend doth close behind him tread. Coleridge's Ancient Mariner. Continuing thus, I came at length opposite to the inn at which the various diligencies and carriages usually stopped. Here I paused. I knew not why, but I remained some minutes, with my eyes fixed on a coach that was coming towards me from the other end of the street. As it drew near, I observed that it was the Swiss diligence. It stopped just where I was standing on, and the door opened. I perceived Henry Clerval, who, on seeing me, instantly sprung out. "My dear Frankenstein!" he exclaimed. "How glad I am to see you! How fortunate that you should be here at the very moment of my alighting!" Nothing could equal my delight upon seeing Clerval. His presence brought back thoughts of my father, Elizabeth, and all those scenes of home so dear to my recollection. I grasped his hand, in a moment forgot my horror and misfortune. I felt suddenly, and for the first time during many months, calm and serene joy. I welcomed my friend, therefore, in the most cordial manner, and we walked towards my colleague. Clerval continued talking for some time about our mutual friends and his good fortune in being permitted to come to Ingolstadt. "You may easily believe," said he, "how great was the difficulty to persuade my father that all necessary knowledge was not comprised in the noble art of bookkeeping. And indeed, I believe I left him incredulous to the last, for his constant answer to my unwearied entries was the same as that of the Dutch schoolmaster of the Vicar of Wakefield. 'I have 10,000 florins a year without Greek. I eat heartily without Greek.' But his affection for me at length overcame his dislike of learning, and he has permitted me to undertake a voyage of discovery to a land of knowledge. It gives me the greatest delight to see you, but tell me, how have you left my father, brothers, and Elizabeth?" "Oh, very well, and very happy. The only a little uneasy that they hear from you so seldom. By the by, I mean to lecture you a little upon their account myself. But, my dear Frankenstein," continued he, stopping short, gazing full in my face, "I did not before remark how very ill you appear. So thin and pale, you look as if you had been watching for several nights." "You have guessed right. I have lately been so deeply engaged in one occupation that I have not allowed myself sufficient rest, as you see, but I sincerely hope that all these employments are now at an end, and that I am at length free." I trembled excessively. I could not endure to think of, and far less to allude to, the occurrences of the predecessing night. I walked with a quick pace, and we soon arrived at my college. And then I reflected, and the thought made me shiver. That creature whom had left my apartment might still be there, alive and walking about. I dreaded to behold this monster, but I feared still more that Henry should see him. Entreating him, therefore, to remain a few minutes at the bottom of the stairs, I dared up towards my own room. my hand already on the lock of the door before I recollected myself. I then paused, and a cold shivering came over me. I threw the door forcibly open, as children are accustomed to do when they expect a spectre standing and waiting for them on the other side. But nothing appeared. He really did not. He was so excited about the idea. It is very much that whole, that lovely, oh no, my brain. The Jurassic Park quote. He was so obsessed with if he could, he never thought if he should. But nothing appeared. I stepped fearfully in the apartment. The apartment was empty. My bedroom was also freed from its hideous guest. I could hardly believe that so great a good fortune could befall me. But when I became assured that my enemy had indeed fled, I clapped my hands for joy and ran down to Clerval. We ascended into my room, and the servant presently brought breakfast. But I was unable to contain myself. It was not joy that possessed me. I felt my flesh tingle with excess sensitivities, and my pulse beat rapidly. I was unable to remain for a single instant in the same place. I jumped over chairs, clapped my hands, laughed out loud. Clerval at first attributed my unusual spirits to joy on his arrival, but when he observed me more attentively, he saw a wildness in my eyes for which he could not account, and my lord's unrestrained, heartless laughter frightened and astonished him. "My dear Victor," he cried, "what, for God's sake, is the matter? Do not laugh in this manner. How ill you are! What is the cause of all this?" "Do not ask me," cried I, putting my hands before my eyes, for I thought I saw the dreaded spectre glide into the room. "He can tell. Oh, save me, save me!" I imagined that the monster seized me. I struggled furiously and fell down in a fit. Poor Clerval. What must have been his feelings? A meeting which he anticipated with such joy, so strangely turned to bitterness. But I was not the witness of his grief, for I was lifeless and did not recover my senses for a long time. This was the commencement of a nervous fever which confined me for several months. During all that time, Henry was my only nurse. I afterwards learned that, knowing my father's advanced age and unfitness for so long a journey, how wretched my sickness would make Elizabeth. He spared them the grief by concealing the extent of my disorder. He knew that I could not have a more kind and attentive nurse than himself, and firm in the hope he felt of my recovery, he did not doubt that, instead of doing harm, he performed the kindest action he could towards them. But I was, in reality, very ill, and suddenly nothing but the unbound, unremitted attention of my friend could have restored me to life. The form of the monster of whom I had bestowed existence was for ever before my eyes, and I raved incessantly concerning him. Doubtless my words surprised Henry. He at first believed them to be the wanderings of my disturbed imagination, but the pertinency with which I continually recurred to the same subject persuaded him that my disorder indeed owed its origin to some uncommon and terrible event. By the very slow degrees with my fervent relapses that alarmed my grieved friend, I recovered. I remember the first time I became capable of observing outside objects with any kind of pleasure. I perceived that the fallen leaves had disturbed, and that the young buds were shooting forth from the trees that shaded my window. It was a divine spring, and the season contributed greatly to my convalescence. I felt also sentiments of joy and affection revive in my bosom. My gloom disappeared, and in a short time I became as cheerful as I was before I was attacked by the fateful passion. "Dearest Clerval," exclaimed I, "how kind, how very good you are to me! This whole winter, instead of being spent in study, as you promised yourself, has been consumed by my sick room. How shall I ever repay you? I feel the greatest remorse for the disappointment of which I have been the occasion, but will you forgive me?" I accidentally pressed twice, but it's okay. "You will repay me entirely if you do not decompose yourself, but get well as fast as you can. And since you appear in such good spirits, may I speak to you on one subject I may not?" May I not? I trembled. One subject? What could it be? Could he allude to an object on whom I dared not even think? "Compose yourself," said Clerval, who observed my change in colour. "I will not mention it if it agitates you, but your father and cousin would be very happy if they received a letter from you in your own handwriting. They hardly know how ill you have been, and are uneasy at your silence." Yes, Clerval seems like a wonderful person. "Is that all, my dear Henry? How could you suppose that my first thought would not fly to those dear, my friends whom I love, and who are so deserving of my love? If this is your present temper, my friend, you will perhaps be glad to see a letter has been lying here for some days. It is from your cousin, I believe." A letter from Elizabeth. I'm going to take the page back there, because we're actually going to stop there now. I know I said half an hour or so, but I don't really want to go on to the next chapter, knowing that I only have like 10 minutes or so left, and I don't think it'll be long enough to read the next chapter, since that one took almost 20 minutes by itself. So I hope you enjoyed this extra long reading, this extra long stream of Frankenstein, yes. This has been Briny Rose Midline in the Forbidden Library. If you did enjoy, I would highly appreciate it if you could leave a like on the video, or even subscribe to my channel. No problem. I'm very much enjoying this book, actually. I'm very excited to read more next week. If you are interested in more of my writing and reading, there is much on the channel, and there's even more in my kofi of me reading books. Oh, my accent's going up everywhere now. I cannot control it. Apparently it's from every point in the UK right now. Oh, lordy loo, that probably just means I need to go. Click all the things in my description. Yes, there are some that can't go to places I have read. There are some places where you can give me money. Not that I haven't just made the most money I've ever made in one stream. Thank you, boy. Do not think I've forgotten that. I believe that £100 will be going straight to the cover of Moon Girl 5, most likely. So thank you for helping fund that. I don't have t-shirts or merch yet, but I am working on it. Please don't worry, but I have Kofi things, and I have Patreon things, and I have things.
and it is good, and you should read it. Yes. And I also have to end the stream because I am unable to continue. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for everyone in the chat. Thank you, everyone who lurked, and thank you to everyone who watches the VOD. This has been such a wonderful stream. Thank you, everyone, for coming. I've had such fun. Such fun! I hope you guys had fun. This has been Bryony Rose Smith live from the Forbidden Library. Goodbye!